You must have seen the peoples giving their seats to pregnant ladies in public transports. Have you ever wondered how the first cell of the human fetus is formed? At what stages of the development does it become attached to the uterine wall of the female and lead to a baby bump? The first cell of the human fetus is a zygote, and it is formed by the process called fertilization. At a specific stage of development, the embryo is implanted in the uterus of the females. And in this video, we will be dealing with two important processes of sexual reproduction in humans. These are fertilization and implantation. So let's begin this journey together. How will you define a fertilization? Fertilization is the process of the fusion of a sperm and an ovum. Here, recall that sperm is a male gamete formed in the seminiferous tubules of the testes of human males, and ovum is produced in the ovaries of females. So, how do these gametes come in contact for fertilization? The answer is copulation. So, the copulation is the process that facilitates the release of the semen comprising of sperms and the secretions of the male accessory glands by the penis into the vagina. So, the male gamete sperm have a flagellum or a tail which makes them motile. And these sperm swim through the cervix, uterus, and finally enters the ampullary isthmic junction of the fallopian tube. If the ovum released from the mature Graafian follicle during the ovulation reaches this junction, that is the ampullary isthmic junction, at the same time fertilization occurs. This means that fertilization is a chance process and does not result from all the copulations. Let's assume that sperms and ovum arrive at the ampullary isthmic junction simultaneously. So, how these two cells can fuse during fertilization? Here is the answer. You know that the semen contains multiple sperms that contact an ovum, right? However, as a sperm comes in contact with the zona pellucida of the ovum, the resultant changes in the membrane of the ovum which inhibits the entry of additional sperms. So, an ovum is fertilized by a single sperm to ensure the formation of a single zygote, which then develops into a single embryo. Can you imagine what would occur if a single ovum is fertilized by multiple sperms? It would lead to polyspermy. So, we can say that fertilization prevents polyspermy. Here, recall that the head of a sperm is covered with a structure called acrosome. The release of enzymes from the acrosome facilitates the penetration of corona radiata and the zona pellucida by the sperm so that it enters the cytoplasm of the ovum. Entry of sperm induces the secondary oocyte to complete the meiosis II, resulting in the formation of a larger ovum or a mature egg and a smaller second polar body. The polar body disintegrates while the haploid nuclei of the sperm and matured ovum fuses to form a diploid zygote. As the sperm and egg are products of meiosis, each is a haploid cell with 23 chromosomes. So, a fusion of their haploid nuclei forms a diploid zygote with 23 pairs of chromosomes. Now that you know about the formation of the zygote, can you imagine how the sex of an unborn child is determined? You need to recall that Males have XY sex chromosomes in their cells, while human females have 2 copies of X chromosomes as sex chromosomes in their cell. But sperms and egg are haploid cells and have only 1 sex chromosome. So, males form 2 types of sperms, that is, 50% of the sperm have an X chromosome and the 50% have the Y chromosome. On the other hand, all the egg cells have 1 copy of X chromosome. Now, the fusion of the sperm carrying an X chromosome with an egg would form a zygote with an XX sex chromosomes. The XX zygote would develop into a girl child. On the other hand, the fusion of the sperm carrying the Y chromosome with an egg would form a zygote with XY sex chromosome. The XY zygote would develop into a boy child. You might ask a question here. How does a single cell called a zygote develop into a multicellular child? During its transport from the fallopian tube to the uterus, the zygote undergo mitotic divisions called cleavage. Cleavage forms an embryo with 16 daughter cells called a morula. The cells of the morula are called blastomeres. A blastocyst is a stage of development consisting of an inner cell mass and a trophoblast. The inner cell mass eventually develops into an embryo, while the trophoblast is involved in the attachment of the blastocyst with the uterine endometrium during implantation. So the implantation begins at the 6 days after fertilization. During the process, the enzymatic secretions by blastocyst allows it to move into the endometrium, allowing it to become surrounded by the endometrium. Implantation of the blastocyst establishes the pregnancy. Now you know about fertilization and implantation. Can you imagine how embryo development occurs? Which part of the body provides the source of nutrition for the developing embryo? So, let us summarize what we have learned.
Manorama Horizon. Learning made simple.